whether you're animal-based or pure carnivore or whatever label you put on your diet, I'm just going to throw them into the carnivore diet category. Someone who hasn't started the process yet, or someone who's new to carnivore, what mistakes do you see people out there making, and how do you, what advice would you give to someone who is new to the diet?
I think the biggest mistakes, there's a couple mindset and then a couple like practical mistakes people will make. The biggest mindset one is that it's going to cure everything instantly. And not understanding that depending on where you're coming from, depending on your metabolic health, you might have a rough time at first, right? And I equate it, I love using analogies. People love to, freak out when I use analogies. But I use it like a car. Like say you have a 20-year-old car and it's been a gas engine forever. And then one day you're like, I'm going to put diesel in it. You're like, well, that might not work so well, right? Like you might have some issues. It's what you're doing. Like you've been running on a carbohydrate energy source for probably your whole life. And now all of a sudden you're taking it away. Your body is going to be like, hey, what are you doing? What's happening here? So you might go through some issues. Some people do, some people don't. So you got to give it enough time. Like you have to, anything under a month, I think you're just doing a disservice. And then from a practical standpoint, it's not having enough fats, right? You are now replacing your fuel source from carbs to fat. And if you are not giving your body enough, now you're really in for a hard time. And also that'll help with digestion, right? Saturated fat is literally your, nature's laxative. If, you're having a problem one way, you might be eating too much saturated fat, especially in one meal. If you're having a problem the other way, you might not be eating enough. So that and electrolytes, people won't realize that they're getting a lot of electrolytes from these processed foods that they're eating, just because they're added in. And when you start removing that, you now realize that, you might be a little bit low and your balances might be off. So from a conceptual standpoint, it's having unrealistic expectations is a big mistake. And then from a practical, just making sure you are getting enough fats and that you're getting enough electrolytes.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that those are really good things. Piggybacking a little bit off of getting enough fats for the individual. Many times what I see people, they jump into a carnivore and animal-based diet and they even within the first week, oh, I'm feeling a little bit better. And then by the end of the first month, they're like, I have no energy. I'm sleeping like shit. I just don't feel great. And one of the questions that I ask is, okay, like, are you eating enough? And they're like, yeah, I eat a ton. And I'm like, okay, let's pull out the old, chronometer, MyFitnessPal, and let's run through a day of eating. And, we tally it up and it's like 1,500 calories or 1,800 calories because, if you're coming from a hyperpalatable carbohydrate, sugar-based diet, it is very easy to hit 3,000 calories in a day. I mean, it's almost impossible not to. And then when you substitute all of those foods out for the most satiating foods, high fat, high protein there is on the planet, many people will just drastically undereat, which has two components of it. When you first start eating a meat-based diet, it is a little harder to eat enough. When I went from vegan to eating meat, to have like one piece of salmon and one half a bowl of, half a pound of ground beef in a single day was like, my God, that's so much meat. And you fast forward to now where I can polish off 5 pounds of meat in a day, no problem. I mean, I can, especially if it's a little bit leaner, that is nothing. And so that's the only part I would probably add to your equation is make sure you're getting enough fat. The fat helps you get enough calories, but also if you tend to not be in a super elevated high fat range, you make sure you're getting enough just overall calories. Because if you're under caloried, if you're in a deficit on top of being nothing but whole foods of meat, you are just going to feel, you're just going to feel exhausted. Your sex drive is going to go to the shit. You're going to sleep like crap. You're going to be moody. And it's just going to be a big pain. I'm curious for you in terms of when you are going through these experiments, just to kind of circle back to these high calorie things, do you have to cognitively, purposely push in extra calories to hit 4,000? Or is it pretty easy for you to hit 3,500, 4,000 calorie mark, just eating as much food as you feel good eating?
So the 4,000 mark starts to get tough. And it gets tough when I start stringing multiple days of it together. And that's where the big variance comes. Is I might eat 4,000 one day and then eat 2,000 the next, right? Like it's all based on how hungry I am. When I start eating for multiple days in a row, north of 4,000, it gets really difficult. Um, During my first experiment, where I kind of shocked myself, I kind of went from, eating 2,500 to 3,000 to all of a sudden eating 4,000. I would get to the end of the day and have 800 calories left. I'm like, I literally have to find a way to get 800. And I did a lot of stuff I'm not proud of to get those calories down, like drinking raw eggs and melted butter and just like stuff I don't want to do. But to your point, when I was doing my 4,000 from the Standard American experiment, there was one day, and I'll literally never forget this. It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I eat, my junk for the day, and I'm like, I'll track it afterwards. Like I'll eat it and then I'll track it. And I blew through my calories by 1,000 calories. It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I just hit 5,000 calories for the day. And I'm like, you've got to be shitting me. Like, what? How? And I'm like, go back and like triple checking all of my stuff. I'm like, damn, I did. And I was like, you know what? I could probably eat another 2,000 calories. Like, that's not even an exaggeration. I could do, 8,000 calories, no problem. Doing that on carnivore, I literally don't even know. I honestly don't know how I would do that. Right. Which is this experiment. I don't know if I'm going to be able to finish it. The upper limit for mine is 5,000 right now. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm like trying to come up with ways of adding, butter protein to my coffees, to how can I get in 400 calories here and 500 calories there? Because I cannot, if you were like, eat steak, eat ribeyes for 5,000 calories, I couldn't do it. Like I just can't. I don't eat that much as it is. And so, yeah, when you talk about the satiating, it's tough. I have to be mindful. Right now I can just, at 3,500 calories, it's like, whatever, just eat normal. The 4,000 calorie, I'll have to be a little more mindful. The 4,500, 5,000, I'm going to have to straight up plan my day. And I probably won't be able to intermittent fast because I'm going to need to eat, from dusk till dawn to be able to get in enough calories.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing. I find that with eating a carnivore animal-based diet, and just like we've been talking about, when I'm hungry, eat until I'm fully satiated and repeat. If that means twice, if that means 3 times, if that means just once, then I do it. And on average, without thinking about it, without trying, I land somewhere between 28 and 3,000 calories every single day on the dot. And I don't really have cravings or urges or anything like that. And compare that to, like you said, when you did your standard American diet kind of experiment, I did the same thing. I last summer tried to give myself eczema again. I wanted to see if I could eat so shitty that I could bring it back and then show how my protocols take it away within a few months. And I wasn't successful in giving myself skin disease again. And I cut the experiment short because one, I was feeling just so shitty. I mean, I was dealing with stuff that I had that aren't a part of my being, like low level depression and anxiety and like zero sex drive and lethargy, and just everything was just blah. The only thing that was fun was eating. And one day I had eaten McDonald's breakfast, and it was like the pancakes, eggs, biscuit, and sausage. I think it's called the big breakfast. And then I had 2 McGriddles and a bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit. I think that all comes out to about 2,400 calories. 45 minutes later, I was starving. Like I was more hungry than before breakfast, and I had a pizza. And then 3 hours later, despite feeling slightly sick, bloated, like almost like like throw up coming up into my throat, like because I've eaten so much. I was like, my brain was like, more food, like eat more food. I kept eating. I had ice cream that day. I had ding dongs that day. I had donuts that day. I hit the 8,700 calorie mark, and it was easy. And what I noticed was that without trying on a standard American diet, I could hit 5,000 to 6,000 calories every single day with ease. And with just a little bit of pushing, I could get to 8,000 calories, like what I eat in almost 3 days of healthy foods. And I just found it absolutely shocking and a little bit sad of how many people that's their normal life of go and grab fast food, eat a shit ton, plus and I was doing diet sodas during the experiment just because I don't know why, but if I was doing 32 ounces of Coke, regular Coke, non-diet on top of that, it would have been even sky high. So people are doing this on a every single day basis, and it's just no wonder why we have a obesity epidemic and a mental health epidemic and a metabolic disease epidemic. It's wild. I love to see people doing these experiments. And like you said, a carnivore diet is not a cure all. It's not gonna fix all the world's problems. It's not gonna in 2 months take you from being a completely sick person to being, thriving elite athlete. But it also it might.